So here we are, folks. It is a first for me doing this, but I saw this content creator in a Facebook soundtrack group, and I was like, "Hey, this guy's got some passion for soundtracks like myself." He started his YouTube channel up again. It is Ted, the soundtrack guy. We welcome him. How you doing, Ted?
I'm doing great. Well, thank you very much. Yes, I started it again. Isn't that something?
Well,
And this just works too because you're Mark the movie man and I'm Ted the
the
soundtrack
soundtrack.
guy. So
That's
this
right.
just kind of like was meant to be.
It was meant to be. It's a match made in YouTube or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But so yeah, most people don't come back. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this probably way too many years, but I've seen a lot of YouTube channels come, get popular, go, and usually people don't come back from it. But you had a channel for a while, went away and came back. So what made you want to come back?
Well, I'll rewind a little bit. I was tossing around the idea to start a soundtrack based YouTube channel for years. And I shuffled my feet, thought about it, and I just kept saying, nah, that's not going to work because, it's a niche. It's a pretty narrowed down niche. And I thought, there's just no way. It'll be a lot of work for, very little gain, so to speak,
Mhm.
even though I was super passionate, of course, about the subject. And eventually I just thought, you know what, I'm going to try this. And what really tipped the scales was I was watching a video by Charles Cornell, who's like a music
Mhm.
theory guy. And he was doing some video work on Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Interstellar
Mhm.
and Bernard Herrmann's Vertigo. And he was breaking down some of those themes. And while I was watching his videos, his passion and his excitement for the music and how it was working dramatically and all that stuff, I thought that's exactly how I feel
Mhm.
soundtracks. And so Charles Cornell, it's kind of his fault that I finally stepped out and decided to try it. I thought, well, and he's got like 1.5 million
Yeah.
subscribers, maybe more. I
Mhm.
mean, he's a big deal. And, I don't have a music theory background. I can't play the piano, although I took piano for about 2.5 years and decided it wasn't playing to my strengths, so to
Sure.
speak. So, but in any case, I thought, well, maybe my passion and just the fact that I've been in this music my entire life will carry me
Mhm.
through and maybe generate some excitement within the niche that is the soundtrack world on the internet. And so I started it and was, kind of gaining some interest
Mhm.
because there were a lot of people like on the Entrada Facebook page, which might have been where you saw one of my posts originally.
Mhm.
There's other Facebook pages, groups that deal with soundtracks, like the what is it, the Cult of Goldsmith, the
Yeah.
Jerry Goldsmith cult or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, and I can relate to that, being a Jerry Goldsmith fan myself. But in any case, it was going better than I expected it to, honestly. Still very modest, though.
Sure, sure.
So, but at the peak of the first trial of Ted the Soundtrack Guy on YouTube, I had 249 exactly subscribers. And what ended up happening was the channel wasn't shut down because of copyright strikes or anything like that. What happened was I had more than one YouTube channel linked to the same email address. And one of those three YouTube channels that I had, I wasn't using anymore. I hadn't used for
Right.
years.
Mhm.
And so, being slightly the OCD man that I am, I decided that I would just delete the YouTube channel that I wasn't using
Oh
anymore, just kind
no.
of clean things up.
Oh no.
So, and I assure you, I was very careful about this. So I can't
Sure.
explain what happened here,
Mhm.
but I went through the steps. You can only delete one YouTube channel at a time anyway.
Right, right.
It doesn't let you like batch delete. So I don't know how this happened, but this is, mark my words, how it happened. I went through the steps. You're about to delete one YouTube channel. Yes, yes, yes. You got to click a bunch of boxes. It won't let you just
Mhm.
do two steps and you're done. It's making
Yeah.
sure. And I deleted it. And for some unknown reason to me, not only did the channel that I intended to delete disappear, but Ted the Soundtrack Guy disappeared right along with it.
Oof.
And I would have thought, oh, well, maybe if they're all linked to the same email address, they all go if you delete one, which doesn't make any sense anyway, but I might have kind of rationalized it that way, I guess, if I
Yeah.
had to. Except that one of the 3 YouTube channels was still there.
Oh.
So that tells me that it was some weird YouTube glitch or something like that. And so anyhow, that's how Ted the Soundtrack Guy originally was destroyed.
Sure.
Yeah, and so to answer your question, just to give you sort of the background to how it all came to pass, I was obviously quite devastated, but I was taking it rather well too, because I thought, I'm just going to take a pause. I'm going to take a breath. Why did this happen? I kind of believe that things generally happen for a reason, as cliched as that is. And so I was keeping it cool, even though it was heartbreaking. And I even thought maybe I'd just close up shop. A couple of people IM'd me on Facebook from the soundtrack community. Were like, what happened to your YouTube channel? And I explained, briefly what I just told you. And I said, honestly, right now, I'm just kind of trying to pick up the pieces and figure out what I'm going to do. And if that means I'm just going to cut my losses and just move on with my life and say, hey, Ted the Soundtrack Guy was a 6-month fling and I'm going on to bigger and better things, maybe that's what it means. But in any case, the honest and easiest answer is that what brought me back ultimately, as well as the encouragement to come back from the soundtrack community, they were vocal to me and sending me messages and saying, oh, I hope you come back. It'd be great to see your plane flying in the skies again. On top of that, it was truly my undying passion for film music and my love for movie music. And it came right down to the fact that I know I'm not likely to ever make any money off of this channel, even if I am to get big. Let's just say best case scenario, I got big, right? I still don't think the opportunity to make money is really there. Why? Because I insist on being able to hear the movie music in the background, which triggers YouTube's copyright, which isn't a strike, or it hasn't been at least so far.
At least not yet. At
least not yet. But what it is, as you well know, being a content creator yourself, is that once you are monetized, it cancels your opportunity to make any money off of the video. So all that to say that I'm doing everything for the love of movie music and to spread the appreciation of movie music. And to one of my goals, I've vocalized this in some of my videos, is to really start a ball rolling and cascading into a larger and larger love and appreciation of film music from a body of people who don't have any awareness that this music is available, first of all, on physical, media, whether it be vinyl or exactly. And thank you, Mark. Thank you for being a proponent, obviously, of physical media, because likewise, I love the ease of the digital world, of course, but I'm not much comfortable with the idea of it replacing physical media. So in any case, that's where we're at with it. And so, that might bring you up to speed.
Well, you're
on that question.
Your channel is definitely gaining speed. Seems to be growing in subscribers, and your content already. You're creating great content. Jerry Goldsmith fan. I picked up on that with the number of videos involving Jerry Goldsmith. So
yes,
for me, when it comes to Jerry Goldsmith, I'm an older music of Jerry Goldsmith fan than his later stuff. Because my friends and I have a few friends who we're all movie crazy, and we all love movie soundtracks as well. So we share that passion that you have. And for me, Goldsmith, later years, he could write very good themes. His scoring was a little off. So made some wonderful opening titles or themes or whatnot. But then the rest of the score, you're like, it's okay. Don't get me wrong, but it's like just not like it used to.
I know what you mean. Yeah, and Jerry Goldsmith was so chameleon like over the course of his career, and each decade kind of has its own Goldsmith signature sound to it.
Hmm.
You know, it's like the 60s had a sound, the 70s had a sound, 80s, 90s, and they all just kind of had Jerry Goldsmith, I think, was just really keen on staying relevant to the time that he was
Yeah.
scoring to. And so whether or not that has to do with what you're referring to, like in his later scores, you know, maybe that was kind of a sensitivity that he was having in order to accommodate kind of the current audience.
Hmm.
I don't know, but in any case, he definitely has a lot of different sounds, a unique sound in each decade, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It was odd when I listened to uh when you have Star Trek 5 and you're like, oh, Jerry Goldsmith, and you're listening, you're like, wait, is that electronics? Does he have electronic sound in there? And then
yeah,
I'm still a fan of his because I went and spent more money I probably than should have, but they did a 30th anniversary release of the Total Recall soundtrack on vinyl, which had the album, which I had listened to a long time, the CD and cassette of
yeah,
just a few, like a dozen tracks. And then it had two discs, records full of the actual score.
yeah.
And that was a lot better than what they had released. I listened to this whole thing of like, wow, these cues in that are awesome, but they never made it on the original album release.
Yeah, you know, and that's interesting that you bring that up because I've noticed in particular the older Perez Saraband label
Hmm.
releases of Jerry Goldsmith's scores were quite brief,
Hmm.
like you're saying, and cut out a lot of music. And it's my understanding too that Jerry Goldsmith was sort of even in favor of making them brief.
Sure.
I've heard that. But you know, it's my personal feeling that Jerry Goldsmith's soundtracks, possibly more than any other film composer I can think of, work so well and best in their full form because he was such a musical storyteller
Hmm.
that it's not like he's just kind of, you know, painting walls randomly to fill in scenes. From the beginning of the score to the conclusion of the score, there really is an arc, just
Hmm.
in the same way that you would want an arc in a novel or in a movie, in the drama. You can hear that arc happening in his score, and that's why it's such a ride whenever you're listening to Jerry Goldsmith. Like Total Recall, you
Yeah.
feel like when you reach the end that you really went on, you know, you went to Mars. You went to Mars with Schwarzenegger, and you went, you know, it was the dream pill that you took, and Jerry Goldsmith concocted it,
Yeah.
and he does that with every one of his scores. So yeah, that's a great observation
Yeah.
to bring up, and I've thought of that myself.
Yeah. And so was Goldsmith your first one? I mean, what was your first soundtrack, or what was the first thing that got you interested in soundtracks and scores and noticing them?
Well, this is a very very early memory, and a lot of people kind of look at me with a side eye when I tell this story because they're a little suspicious that maybe I'm not romanticizing my life with soundtracks, but
Sure.
this is the truth. I was born in 1980, and E.T. the Extraterrestrial was released in
Oh
theaters in
yeah.
1982.
Hmm.
And my parents took me to see E.T. the Extraterrestrial as a 2-year-old. And I remember seeing that movie at 2 years old.
Hmm.
How? The only thing I can think is that it was such a profound and formative experience because of Steven Spielberg's incredible film that he put together. Just
Right.
just the images and the light, the contrasting light that he uses in ET. It's just every picture, every shot is like a photograph, and it sears into your mind. And so as a child, that was happening on the you know, visual end
Hmm.
of things. But then John Williams was doing something even more profound, in my opinion, and that was that he was telling that story on a spiritual level, vibrating in a realm that you can't even put into words, but it's so true that it really is deep down where we all are. And
Mhm.
that's one of the other beautiful things that I, truly believe about movie music is because it's written inspired by drama, inspired by stories, and inspired by character, and all those things are us. We really are, as human beings, we're so much more alike, I believe, fundamentally where it matters than we are different.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I have faith that with hopefully the enthusiasm that I bring to the table about movie music and everything that I'm attempting to do at Ted the Soundtrack Guy, that I can get that ball rolling that I was talking about earlier to kind of awaken people who would perhaps never realize that this music was worth listening to. People might hear it in the movie setting, but not really take away from it. They were moved and all that stuff, but it's not perhaps connecting that, wow, I could enjoy that music that affected me so much outside of the movie experience. I mean, I could be rocking to Jerry Goldsmith or John Williams or whoever, while I'm going down the interstate,
Mhm.
like people just don't realize. And so, but I believe because of the fact that I was saying that we resonate on that same level, that's why movies affect us the same way. That's why movies like E.T. are universal, because no matter what our background is, no matter what our experience is, we're all sitting in the dark theater and we're all feeling the same emotions. How can that possibly be when we have so many different journeys and so many different stories of our own? But that's where it really hits us. So that's why I have faith that people really can start coming out of the woodwork. People that maybe only are used to listening to, this might kind of date me to say MTV, but to listen
Date
to,
you? I was born
yeah.
in 75. You're not dating you. It's perfectly fine. So, you know.
Yes, but people that, and I'm not knocking that because
Mhm.
yes, I am Ted the Soundtrack Guy, and mostly what I listen to is obviously movie music, but I also listen to other kinds of music.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
But people generally are only listening to what's on the radio, or
Mhm.
what sort of kind of the MTV, the top 40, whatever it is, whether you're into country or rock or rap or whatever, but that's what people listen to. But I think that they can really be awakened to this because when I was 2 years old, something was awakened in my heart that
Mhm.
never went to sleep and has only been growing since. And so that's what it was. It was John Williams in E.T. the Extraterrestrial that really gave, root to my love for movie music. And that was the beginning. I had that soundtrack on vinyl and it was a picture disc. It had a picture of E.T. the Extraterrestrial
Yeah.
from the moon, like it was the bike over the moon on
Sure.
one
Yeah. Yeah.
side and
Yeah.
E.T. kind of in the forest on the other side. And I played that soundtrack to death on this plastic. Yeah,
The plastic turntable. The plastic turntable.
it was the plastic Fisher Price turntable. It was an orange chunky arm on it,
Yes.
and boy, it was a beautiful vinyl too. And I probably just destroyed
Mm.
it with that junk needle. But I was just a little kid and I didn't care. I listened to that thing to death. And so that's where it began. That was the beginning of the love affair.
See that, and I think it's a generational thing. I mean, you're on the edge, not quite Gen X anymore, but you're probably in there. But I think it's that generational thing because I was born in '75. My first film was Star Wars. My parents took
Oh,
me. My parents took me to 2.5 years old. Took me to see Star Wars. Now I'm not like you. I don't have that much memory of seeing it, but there's the music, and everyone I've talked to is like from it's from like, and he's had other scores, but pretty much from like 77 to I would say 92, 93 with Jurassic Park. Williams did no wrong. I mean, there
oh,
was, I don't think
yeah,
he had a single weak score at all. After like mid 90s, that it kind of, it was varied. It was still good. I mean, it's like bad John Williams is still good soundtracks, but
you
compared to
got
his
that right. Yeah,
other work, it wasn't quite as strong, starting in the
right.
mid '90s. But for me, it was Star Wars, and so that
Yeah.
that theme is ingrained in my DNA.
Oh,
And you know, and John Williams' later stuff, it's like you can still tell what themes he really loves. Like E.T., and I know in some interviews he's mentioned how E.T. was his favorite. You can tell E.T. is one of his favorite. Just that entire soundtrack, you feel that. And in later movies, like with the sequel trilogy, yes, I invoked the sequel trilogy. Some of that music is okay, but you can tell he really loved Ray's theme because out of
yes.
all those
Mhm.
tracks, Ray's theme, like you hear that and you feel that on an emotional, for me anyway, you feel
Yep.
that more than any of the other newer themes he did. Just like in the prequels, you know, the Duel of Fates, that one, that track, you could tell he loved that track. So you
Oh,
could,
yeah.
that comes through, I think, what a composer really loves a piece of music, that just comes across, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, it's very, very clear when a composer is inspired
Hmm.
versus maybe when, and of course I mean this lovingly, when they're maybe kind of just phoning it in because they're trying to write score for a scene that's maybe not really touching them
Right.
in the most profound way. But as you stated, with somebody like John Williams or Jerry Goldsmith, even when they're quote unquote just phoning it in, it's still incredible music. But yeah, those special themes and those special scores, like um, well, Star Wars is one of these scores that I would like to bring up. I brought up
Yeah.
Star Wars 1977
Hmm.
and Raiders of the Lost Ark
Oh,
in,
yeah.
as scores that not only was it clear that John Williams was so inspired when he wrote those soundtracks, every track,
Hmm.
there's no exception in
No.
my opinion. Wall to wall, beginning to end, John Williams was nailing that. And the other fascinating thing about it that I brought up, it was actually the video that I did on Michael Giacchino's Fantastic Four First Steps.
Mhm.
And I was making the comparison that clearly in the recording for Giacchino's Fantastic Four, you could tell that the players, the musicians knew that they had gold in front of them. And the inspiration that hit Michael Giacchino rocketed
Into
to
the,
the
yeah.
players and the musicians. And in the same way, it translated to the LSO when they were playing John Williams' Raiders of the Lost Ark and
Oh, yeah.
Star Wars and others, of course. But those were the
Hmm.
two that I brought up because you can just hear that. So, like, for instance, when you compare the soundtrack of Raiders of the Lost Ark, for instance, to the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, right? And
Hmm.
you compare the Raiders' marches, it's the exact same thing, but I am convinced, not that anything about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is bad, it's just that I feel like there was some kind of an oomph, some kind of a almost a lustful, like, yes, this is awesome in the playing of the Raiders March from
Right.
the original that is more just a performance
Yeah.
in Kingdom of the
Yep.
Crystal Skull,
Mhm.
even though it's top notch, musicianship, top notch.
Right.
Every the recording, it's just sounds amazing. But we're talking about, I think, something that's in the unseen,
Hmm.
something, a heart that is present in the recordings that you can't really write down on paper. You can't make it up. You can't fake it. It's either there or it's not, and it's a really special thing when that happens.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, and that artistry comes through, you know. And so for scores for me, yeah, John Williams. I mean, obviously, at the time we're born, if you weren't influenced, I mean, John Williams is one of those to where people may not have seen Star Wars, but they know the Imperial March, they know the Star Wars theme, they know the Raiders March, even if they haven't seen the movie, they know
Oh yeah, yeah,
that's from there.
yeah.
You know, and those iconic things. And you know, growing up, it was one of those things where I don't think people realize in the 80s, scores, even as big as Williams was, movie soundtrack scores were not considered moneymakers. So they very rarely released, like, for retail purchase, a lot of scores. A lot of them
Right.
were promotional only releases, where they'd send them to like records, you know, record like radio stations and that to play on like public radio or whatever. But a lot of them just weren't released for retail. So we missed out on a lot of those scores. And, it wasn't until I'll have to say it. I think, the mid 80s, not just Williams, but other composers stepping up that people were showing the interest in, Alan Silvestri, my favorite, Danny Elfman. I love me my Danny Elfman scores, man.
Yes. Yes. I see Batman back there.
Yeah, the original. I was so happy I got an original. I found it as a thrift store because I've got the re-release from Mondo, which is gorgeous. But I like to try to get the original print.
Oh, lovely, yeah.
And so, for me growing up and listening to the scores, first it was always like Williams, okay, Goldsmith, and it was like Danny Elfman came along, and I'm like, oh. And then Batman blew up in '89, and suddenly people were buying his score as well. And other people, and suddenly records companies felt like, hey, there's money in this besides just Williams. We could sell more than just Williams and Jerry Goldsmith scores. We could sell Alan Silvestri. And suddenly in the '90s, we saw more score albums being released. But it took a while, I think.
It took a while. And there it is again, right? It was sort of this hidden opportunity. People just they weren't sure if this was going to sell, but in fact, people really do want to listen to this music. It just needs to be made available. And I think awareness needs to be spread about it. So that definitely is key. And you're right. John Williams kind of shattered that barrier with, I want to say perhaps it was Jaws.
With Jaws would be the first one. Yeah.
Yeah, 1975. And at that time, it's my understanding that they actually recorded a separate soundtrack for the MCA release at the time of the movie's release. And so that album sold incredibly well in the realm of soundtracks. And then, of course, as you stated, Star Wars A New Hope came out, and that blew everything away. I mean, that would probably charted right up there with, I don't know, Michael Jackson or something. Right?
Well, funny you mentioned Michael Jackson. I found it. Unfortunately, the Edge is beat up, but I got it for a decent price. I've got the Michael Jackson E.T. narration on vinyl, the box set that he did.
I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Isn't that something? Yeah, what a treasure. That reminds me, I had that as well as like this E.T. the Extraterrestrial storybook that was on
45.
Yeah, and it was Drew Barrymore was narrating the story, and you had little snippets of dialogue from the movie and sound effects and John Williams' score in there. Yeah, all these fun kind of novelties from the time. Yeah.
Well, and then I also have the Burger King. I didn't even realize I have all of them. It's one of those, I've got boxes and things I go through and I'm like, oh, hey, I have this. I've got the 45s, the whole series that Burger King did. Because, yes, folks, back in the day, they actually released the little storybooks on 45 with Happy Meals of Gremlins.
Now, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a whole series of storybooks, like 4 or 5 of them on 45 that are Gremlin storybooks.
That is interesting.
And it includes some of the music from the movie, obviously, and clips in that. And yeah, but Gimmick,
I was just going to say, I got to say, any Happy Meal that includes Jerry Goldsmith music, and it is indeed a Happy Meal in my book.
Yeah, I can see that. But it was just funny how in the 90s the scores kind of came forward a little bit more. And I'm not saying that Williams and Goldsmith didn't bring bring it to retail and people weren't buying them, but really 89, 88, like I said, with the Batman, everybody was like, wait, there's other composers besides Goldsmith and Williams, because that's all you saw in the stores.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, there's a market here, and then it was like, suddenly we saw a whole bunch of scores being released. You remember what was your first purchased soundtrack?
The first soundtrack I bought with my own money. It's funny. maybe not with 100% accuracy, but
Mhm.
I can almost remember where I got every single soundtrack I've ever owned,
Mhm.
where and how I got it, if it was
Yep.
gifted to me. But let's see, because that's going way, way back, right? But if I can remember seeing ET at 2 years old, I can certainly remember this. So
Sure.
I want to say the first soundtrack I ever bought on cassette
Yep.
was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom on the Polydor label.
Oh, yeah.
And it was at Tower Records. And I walked in there. They had the cassettes on the wall at the time. It wasn't
Sure.
like in sort of a standing bin in the middle of the room. It was on a wall.
Yeah.
And I remember going down and seeing Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Oh, man, I almost lost my top. I would have been, man, I was just a kid.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so that was cassette, the
Mhm.
first purchase on cassette. And I'm certain of what the first compact disc soundtrack was that I
Mhm.
ever bought. And it was the score for the original Terminator by Brad Fiedel.
Oh, yeah.
And that was going back so early on in the life of the compact disc that it wasn't just the jewel case CD, it was inside this long rectangular box. It was
Yeah.
up here at the top. You kind of had to
Mhm.
open it up. And, you know, I always had a collector's heart. And so I like really carefully opened it up because I was going to keep the cardboard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and took that CD out of there, and that was on the DCC compact disc label, and they
Mhm.
also did a really nice release of Raiders of the Lost Ark too that I got so much pleasure out of. But yeah, that was it, and then I mean, adios to the rest of it.
Right.
I've purchased probably somewhere in the realm of 1,000 scores since, I would guess. I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
but
no, my collection is quite huge. This is just behind here is all vinyl, and then my cassettes are over here. I don't have too many of those left over anymore, but I got
yeah.
my huge volume of boxes of CDs and such in the other room.
Yeah. I
But,
know. Yeah, that's the one drawback maybe of physical media, right? Is there's only so much storage space at some point.
yeah, just ask my wife.
Yeah, right. Hopefully, she's supportive of this habit. Yeah,
she is to a point. She's like, I go, I gotta buy another shelf. She's like, no, you don't. You don't need to buy. No,
Yeah.
I need another. She's like, no, if you have another shelf, you're gonna put more. I'm like, what? No, but
yeah, because
no,
every shelf with empty shelves on it just means that you got to fill it up. So that means you just,
why
you know,
have
I
a
mean,
shelf?
what else are you supposed to do with it, right?
Right.
I mean, but yeah, speaking of Danny Elfman and, you know, the first soundtracks that I ever had, the first Danny Elfman soundtrack I ever had was gifted to me, and that was the cassette of the soundtrack to Beetlejuice. And I want to say that was on Geffen Records.
Yeah, it was Geffen.
Yeah. And so that was my first Danny Elfman. And that actually was kind of, what would you call that? That shifted my world a little bit because I was used to John Williams, maybe more classical and perhaps maybe straightforward in terms of orchestrations style. And then all of a sudden I was hearing this kind of capering, dark, gothic circus music. And I was just like, what is this? Yeah, and so anyway, I really loved that score, and that was the beginning of my Danny Elfman infatuation.
Nice.
So
not a bad one to start off with.
Yeah.
The thing is, it was one of those things where I enjoyed the music in Beetlejuice, but as a kid when it came out, I didn't pay too much attention to composers outside of, Williams and Goldsmith, and I think Silvestri were the only ones that I really was familiar recognizing their names. The other ones are like, hey, this is great music, but I never sought out the composer. But then Batman came along, and that was one of those, what I call those milestone movies that Batman just, as a cinema person, one of those where you watch a movie and it strikes you in every single way possible. And Batman was, to me, it spoke to me so much. I was like, Tim Burton. And I'm like, oh, wait, he did Beetlejuice. And then I'm listening to the music. I'm like, I love this music. I'm like, wait, Danny Elfman. Oh, he did Beetlejuice. Wait, he did Pee-wee's Big, suddenly I discovered that I've loved his back catalog, but I didn't realize it was Danny because I never, as a young kid, like 10 years old, I'm not paying real attention to that, me personally. So, but yeah, Beetlejuice is an awesome one to start with. Batman was, for me, Danny Elfman, and then I backtracked for as far as purchasing. For me, the first one, it wasn't a score. The first soundtrack I actually bought was for Spaceballs on cassette. I had to order it. You had to
Yeah.
order it because they didn't offer it in stores. I found it in a magazine that said, "Oh, cassette of Spaceballs soundtrack," and I'm like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
"Oh crap!" So I asked my parents, and it came in the mail, and I listened to the heck out of that one.
That's awesome.
you
Yeah.
know. But as far as scores go, yeah, I mean, my dad and them had Star Wars. This will be funny. One of the earliest soundtracks that I would listen to constantly, and I love it today. And I torture my best friend of 37 years with it because he loves soundtracks as well, but he hates the score to Flash Gordon from
Flash
1980 from
Flash
Queen.
Gordon. Yes. He hates that score, huh?
He does. He just does not like that. The Flash.
What?
He just.
Yeah. Well, now, isn't it true that they didn't really use much of the original score in the film itself, but
Right.
that by Soundtracks Records actually put out
Mhm.
the score album? So is he not fond of the music that's in the movie, or is he not fond of the original score?
He's not. It's mostly that theme song, the Flash
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
Of course, I've tortured him over the years with it too, so that might have something to do with it.
I
But
can relate to that kind of thing. Yeah, I've got some good friends that go way back, and we see eye to eye on a lot of things, but every once in a while, yeah, it's like stone grating against stone, and it's just not lining up. So yeah, that's good fun to be
yeah,
able to tease him with that.
but that's one of those things where I'm sure you're aware. Once you're kind of aware and start paying attention to this music, it opens up this gate, and it sounds like that's what you're trying to do with your show is just kind of this open up this gateway of holy crap, there's all this really great music out there. I love, Queen only did, I think, two soundtracks. They did the soundtrack to Flash Gordon, which I love. Actually, I still got the vinyl. When my mom passed, I got our the record soundtrack, and she still had that in there. So I have the original vinyl I used to listen back in 1980.
He was a
And
Queen fan.
it sounds wonderful.
Yeah,
It's that one, and there's music to Highlander. Um,
Highlander.
while I know they aren't scores, but vocal soundtracks, I think, have a
Yeah,
place as well with the right choice. It's not just those orchestral ones, those vocal ones, if the needle drop is right, really can affect you as well.
that's true. That's very true. I'm really fond of a couple of song albums, if you want to call them that.
Mhm.
I always thought now both the scores and the songs
Mhm.
for these particular movies, I think, are just both incredible, and that's the original Karate Kid films.
Oh, yeah.
The Bill Conti scores are just awesome, but then I also thought that the song albums, especially for the first Karate Kid, just really hit that
Mhm.
movie and just communicated that through all the song selections. It's a lot of fun. And then as a child of the 80s, I really appreciate the song component to the television show Stranger Things
Oh,
with
yeah.
all the 1980s songs. And there are a lot of examples, but you're right. You're right. Those can be fun albums too. Now, for me, I don't so much care for it when they like mix the two. I either want the score or I want the song. So,
Right.
like for
Mhm.
instance, talking about Alan Silvestri and
Mhm.
his work for Back to the Future, originally there was like maybe just I don't know 2 or 3 tracks from him was all, and the rest of it was just like
Yep.
Huey Lewis and the News and other 80s selections. And I'm not saying it wasn't a fun album as far as that goes, but it was like what I really wanted for that score was Alan Silvestri's music. And so that was a big disappointment for me. It was just like, oh, there's only like 2 tracks. And the old Gremlins album was
Oh,
the same
yeah.
way. Like side B had,
Mhm.
I think, 3 Jerry Goldsmith kind of mini suites or something
Yep.
like that.
Mhm.
And I actually really like the songs from Gremlins as well. But again, it's sort of like that cheat. It's like you're giving me a little bit of both, but not all of either. It's just
Right.
like so if it's a score, give me the score. If it's the songs, give me the songs. Don't mix them up.
Man,
So that's
there's
just
a
weird.
reason why I have the Mission Impossible album, though the only song on the entire vocal album that was actually in the movie because it said music from and
And
inspired
inspired
by.
by.
You know, and there was only the Cranberries song, but they filled this album with like 10 tracks of vocal songs, which aren't great, and
Yeah.
2 Danny Elfman score tracks. And the reason I bought that CD was for the 2 Danny Elfman tracks because I didn't expect them to release the score. But like
Yeah.
6 months later, because yes, folks, back in the day, it took a while before they actually released all of this.
Yeah.
6 months later, there was a Danny Elfman score CD, and I snapped that up quick because I was like, I was consuming everything Danny Elfman after Batman. It was like,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, yeah. How do you feel about some of his more, I guess you would call it serious work, like A Simple Plan and Somersby and Dolores Claiborne and those kinds of things?
I think they're
Black
wonderful.
Beauty.
Black Beauty. I was just thinking about this the other day. I nearly got scammed by a guy posing as Danny Elfman. I felt bad because it was on his page and someone replied and liked me, and I'm like, Danny Elfman did. And then I mentioned the soundtrack, and they're like, oh, I don't go on here much. Can you take me? You know, can you find me on Telegram? I'm like, okay, damn it, scammer. I got taken. The IT guy in me slapped me and said, idiot. I'm like, I was just excited. But you're right. Black Beauty, Danny Elfman has some underappreciated scores. There's Black Beauty is a gorgeous score. Summersby is an underrated score as well. Those are 2 gorgeous scores. Yeah, what he did for Dolores Claiborne was great with kind of the dark themes worked in there. Black Beauty, though, is gorgeous. I mean, you listen to Black Beauty, you go, wait, this is Danny?
Yeah, it's just beautiful. It really is.
And then he can do fun score. He's a diverse composer, and it's been great to see him still working in composing over these years, considering he came from Oingo Boingo, and seeing how he's kind of elevated and moved up in the score talk. So like he's in top 5 lists of a lot of people, for the music he makes. But his early stuff was really diverse because you mentioned Black Beauty and Summersby, but then you get Midnight Run, which is like this fun road show type music that's peppy and it's got guitars and such. It's a smaller scale, but it's really fun. And I mean, like I said, I consumed a lot of his early work, and he's a diverse soundtrack guy too. But in his scores, when he does his darker scores, if you listen to Danny Elfman, you can hear his signature stuff. His use of violins, his use of choir, a choir especially in there. That's all like you're like, oh yep, nope, this is Danny.
It's his fingerprints all over it. Yeah.
He's not exactly cribbing from his other work like James Horner. May he rest in peace. I love you, James. I really do, but wow, man.
Yeah, I know. I always think whenever I have cause to think about that, I always think of the danger motif that he's used in countless soundtracks. That
or the running the crescendo, the building crescendo of the violin, from Star Trek 2, but he used that in so many places.
So many of them, yes. And I echo your affection. I love James Horner, and I haven't yet produced a review of a James Horner score yet, but I'm certainly excited to do that because he's written some obviously outstanding soundtracks, and there's a lot that I love about his music. But I know what you're referring to. Yes.
Yeah, it's just funny to listen to because it's like outside of any other composer, I think Horner's is the quickest you can ID because he likes to reuse phrases, and that's not bad because it fits the movie though that he's doing. It's not like he just throws it in there; it does fit.
It works.
It works. It works. But I got one of his earliest ones. I looked for it forever. It was finally released on CD, I think by Varese Sarabande. Was Krull, the soundtrack to Krull.
Yeah.
And if you listen,
that's one of my favorites.
And if you listen to that, though, you hear nearly every James Horner cue that would pop up through his music later on.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's true. And the way that he was kind of like using the horns and stuff back then,
Hmm.
it really sounds again sort of like Wrath of Khan
Yeah,
stuff, and it was just like all that in there really, really heavily. But yeah, Kroll though, regardless, personally, that if that's not my favorite James Horner, because my channel is my favorite soundtrack with Ted the Soundtrack Guy, and it's kind of
sure.
like I'm on the hunt to figure out what's my favorite soundtrack because I literally can't decide. I can't even
Yeah.
decide what my favorite soundtrack is when I narrow it down to a specific composer.
Hmm.
But I can get kind of close. I can sort of use a shotgun,
Sure,
blast, and
sure.
I've got kind of like I'm in the area, and Kroll is somewhere in the vicinity of my favorite James Horner soundtrack. So yeah.
Yeah, Krull is fantastic, and there's also I think people forget. I always mispronounce his name. Craig Safan, though, who did the music for Remo Williams, "The Adventure Begins," and well, I've got Last Starfighter on vinyl.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, I looked for it forever on Discogs, and the thing is, people were offering it, and I was like, I got into the vinyl collection, and I was like, I'm only going to spend this much ever on one single record, and that lasted a year. Uh, and then I started paying more money, and then I went to Discogs, and it's like, oh look, a marketplace. This is dangerous.
This
And
is yeah.
so someone offered The Last Starfighter, but I didn't notice it was in a generic sleeve. So I got the record, but I didn't have the artwork. But that's okay because I wanted the music. The music for
Yeah.
Last Starfighter and even Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, wonderful, bombastic hero music that just you listen to, you're just like, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Even if the movies didn't do that well at the box office, I'm sure you've discovered there's some of those smaller movies that had wonderful soundtracks.
Oh, isn't that the truth? And that actually is a nice little segue back to Jerry Goldsmith. To me, he's the king of writing incredible soundtracks that are just head and shoulders above so many of the film projects for which they were written.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. Like Jerry Goldsmith, boy, John Williams got an amazing filmography to write music for
Mhm.
almost all the way through, except maybe for like Heartbeats sticks out to me as not being such a great one. But
Yeah.
but Jerry Goldsmith, he had a handful of excellent films that he
Mhm.
wrote music for, but so many of them were just either okay to just plain, you know, lacking. We'll
Lacking.
say it nicely.
No,
But Jerry
yeah.
Goldsmith's music, like Lionheart, for instance,
Oh yeah.
right? His score for Lionheart, and that film, it just doesn't match up. And then like High Velocity is a really little known film and
Oh,
score.
I know High Velocity. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And his soundtrack for High Velocity is one of my favorites. But that movie again is a very extreme example of what we're talking about, where it's like, and Jerry Goldsmith, one of the things that fascinates me the most about him is that obviously I never knew him personally, but I feel like, the other thing about music, and we've kind of touched on this in a sense, is that when I hear Jerry Goldsmith's music or anyone's music, I almost feel like I do know that person in a sense.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
kind of get like an inside look into their mind to some degree, if you track what I'm saying, of course. But and so in his case, like I would, I'm convinced that he had such a fertile imagination and such a well-tuned sense for story
Mhm.
that when he was writing music for, say, a mediocre picture, he had the ideal version of that movie in his mind. He had we'll say, the Francis Ford Coppola version or the Steven Spielberg
Right.
version in his mind, and that's what he was writing the music for. And he just like never mind the fact that this movie is suffering. And don't get me wrong, I get it. Like making a movie is probably one of the most complex, difficult things to pull off. ever. So even a mediocre movie, even a bad movie, I actually find a lot to appreciate even there
Hmm.
because of the fact that it truly is an epic feat to pull off a film and to make it fly and then to send it to a realm where it's like it becomes one of the greats. That's like winning the lottery. And it's
Yeah.
not like we're not dealing with talented people, even when we're talking about movies that are just, mediocre. They're very, very talented people all the way through, from the director to the cast. But there's so many opportunities and so many different moving parts for things to go wrong that sometimes it just doesn't come together. But the beautiful thing about a film composer is that he's kind of more like a novelist where he's working in solitude. He doesn't have to deal with 10,000 other moving parts to
Right.
see if it all works together and it's contingent on everybody else's kind of, coming up to par with it and delivering. It's just, that one person. And of course, I know it takes more than just one person in order to get it fully recorded and
Right. Yeah.
finally finished. Yes, there are other people that are involved, but it starts
Mhm.
there, like in the imagination, in this case, of like Jerry Goldsmith. And
Yeah.
all of that world is in his mind, like a novelist falls into sort of a waking dream where they're almost in a trance writing the novel because it's so vivid. And I'm convinced that that's how it was for Jerry Goldsmith. He had the ideal version of every movie he was working on in his mind. Um,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I wouldn't doubt it. And you being a Goldsmith fan, and again, I'm a fan of so many different composers. I'm like you. It is hard to narrow it down. But
yeah.
Goldsmith, it was like, I hate to say it, but it was like Goldsmith in the '80s was kind of doing the light work. If it wasn't Williams, it was Goldsmith doing scores because
Yeah.
for like the smaller films. Because two of my favorite cheesy, campy canon films are Alan Quartermain in The Lost City of Gold and King Solomon's Mines. And Jerry Goldsmith did the score for those, and those are so much fun
They
scores
are.
to listen to. And the movies are cheesy and campy. They're supposed to be. They were meant to be kind of Canon's take on Indiana Jones. I
Yeah.
love them. One of the first appearances of Sharon Stone. I love those films as well. They're so charming. But Jerry Goldsmith's music in that was wonderful. Or in Explorers, his score for
Oh,
Explorers, man.
Explorers. Oh, yeah. Boy, I know. Isn't it just so much fun? Yeah, talk about just freeing the child in
Hmm.
every one of us. Those scores are just incredible. And I miss scores that were fun like that. These days,
Hmm.
I feel like it's kind of rare to come across scores that are fun, that are just like, they're not trying to be so serious or so like cemented in reality like we've
Right.
done. And there's a time and a place for those stories and those movies for sure. But it's just overwhelmingly, it seems like these days, it's just such a rare thing that we let loose and just, remember that what it was his name in Hook. It was Peter Banning when he was
Yeah.
an adult, that he was actually Peter Pan. I
Right.
want I want movie music to more often remind us that there is a Peter Pan that is still alive, hopefully in every single one of us. And that was one of the things that got me so excited about the soundtrack to the
Fantastic.
Fantastic Four First
Mhm.
Steps, is it had that fun, just totally. I mean, it was almost outrageously
Oh
fun.
yeah. No, it's totally over the top, but it fits the
Yeah,
cheesy '60s sci-fi aesthetic of the film. That music, yeah, I've got it pre-ordered. I went ahead and I pre-ordered the soundtrack to it on
yeah.
vinyl. It's not going to be out till October, but the vinyl isn't. But I'm looking forward to it. But no, when I listen to that, but I think it's a window to the bigger problem with movie scores, and I've had this discussion too with my friends who, critic friends and that who love scores, is that
Yeah.
sound engineering now is different than, and yeah, I can say it because it's 2026, than 40 years ago for music, for movies in general. there is not a wall of sound. I think Fantastic Four also works because the director and filmmakers allow that score to breathe and come through. A lot of modern scores outside of the main opening theme, maybe you don't really hear the music too much because there's so much other stuff going on sound wise.
Right.
And I think sometimes, I'm not saying they, like you were saying, phone it in, but I think composers realize that and they don't seem to have as much of those fun cues in their music anymore because they're like, it's going to be covered by the sound, the sound of this, the special effects of this as well. And it's going to be mixed down to where you're not going to hear it.
Right.
You're,
Yeah. And you know what that makes me think of? That's a great point. A case study, kind of like what I would always indicate when it comes to like, how should a film director and film composer collaboration work? Like
Mhm.
this is the ideal way it should work is the last 15 minutes of E.T. the Extraterrestrial, where Steven Spielberg actually edited his picture in favor of John Williams' score and how it worked
Right.
best and how it built dramatically in the most effective way, rather than editing his picture the way that he wanted to do it and then asking John Williams to structure his music accordingly, which is normally how it works. And usually it has to work that way. I
Right.
understand that. But just as a very obvious example, the result to a director stepping back and saying, in his case, John Williams, you carry us back
Hmm.
to mothership. You carry ET back home. And he just let him go. And that is, in my opinion, one of the most thrilling, exhilarating, operatic when it reaches the last like 3 to 4 minutes of film scoring that has ever been written and can ever be experienced in a movie. It really shows you the power of movie music and what you can do with it when you give it the space, when you
Right.
allow it to breathe, when you give the composer that space to say, okay, well, my music is going to be front and center
Hmm.
under the hot spotlights. Everything is going to be shown. I better make this, something extraordinary. I better knock
Yeah.
this out of the park rather than, you know, we've got 16 or more tracks of, sound effects just burying
Yeah.
all of the movie. Is like, what's the point? Like, I'm going to write this symphony that nobody's ever going to hear. So I may as well just like drum out it's something real quick, I guess. I don't know.
And I know I'll probably get flack for this for those folks who watch this. Hopefully, we get viewers, but a
Yeah.
lot of viewers, because I want them to know about your channel for sure. But one of the flack I'm going to get is some of the Marvel scores are a little underwhelming and
I agree.
sound very similar from film to film because you're dealing with the cinematic universe. And so when you're doing crossovers, you're going to want, I'm assuming this is the logic, is they want those themes to fit in. So even though you've got Thor in his standalone movie, when he's in the Avengers and he shows up, you want his theme to kind of meld
Right.
well with the rest of the
Right.
soundtrack. You can't have it so, stand outish. And I think that's what happened with some of those Marvel films, because those Marvel scores, they have great themes. The rest of the score, though, you're just kind of like background music.
Generic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's no slight. I'm not slighting the composer at all, which Alan
Sure.
Silvestri did most of it. But it's just, I think that's part of the limitation that he was probably presented with.
Right.
Whereas you get the score to one of my favorite movies still of the aughts of the new 21st century, Mad Max Fury Road soundtrack is by Junkie XL is amazing because it's literally part of the movie at one point.
Right.
With
Yes.
the guitar guy, with the playing the electric guitar, flame throwing. But that score was allowed to breathe, and it's so good. I
It
mean,
is. It's just wonderful. Yeah, I'll stand in front of the firing squad with you when it
Mhm.
comes to that remark on a lot of the superhero scores, and there are others too, but
Oh yeah.
that's a really good, clear example. And again, it goes without saying that, like I was talking about filmmakers in general and everybody
Right.
involved in film productions, I have nothing but the highest regard and respect for these composers, even when they're not necessarily delivering in the way that I would have them deliver. Let's say
Right.
if I was the director and I could, kind of guide that ship home. But yeah, I think it's a missed opportunity too many times. And the other thing about it, though, is that I think the Fantastic Four First Steps, because of how immediately there was like this flash of excitement
Mhm.
across the internet for the music and the movie as well, is, a huge success. And of course, you're always going to have your critics, but that's just part of the game. So my point is, though, is that people are really excited about this. So that convinces me that people really do want to hear that style of movie music again. They want to hear that those obvious themes again. And of course, again, not every movie needs or should have, you
No.
know, the Superman 1978 John Williams theme. I get that. Like, you need the understated scores. You need those dramas that are just kind of like quieter and don't have this thing in your face
Right.
musically. Like, of course. But I'm just saying, like, there are, again, so many opportunities, like all the comic book movies, the Marvel DC universes, and so on and so forth. And there's way more examples. But all those opportunities, I think what people really want is they want a return to a John Williams esque form. Not to say that you would copy John Williams, but
No.
whoever the composer
Mhm.
is, like for instance, Steven Spielberg. It's my understanding that he was talking with Robert Zemeckis about the theme for Back to the Future, and they asked Alan Silvestri to write a more John Williams esque score, and he came out with the theme for Back to the Future that we all know and love. That's what I mean, but it was still Alan Silvestri. It was his
Right.
heart. It was
Oh yeah.
his imprint. So that's what I mean. Like, every unique voice
Mhm.
as the composer, bring your authentic self
Mhm.
to the stage without copying somebody else, but bring forward these obvious themes and these heroic fanfares and just this stuff that makes you want to, you know launch into the air. Whether you've been sprinkled with pixie dust or not, this music is just taking you to the moon and back. Do that, and that's
Yeah.
what people want. I'm convinced that's what people want.
Oh, absolutely. And you can do it now. And like you said, Fantastic Four First Steps. And I think, and I haven't looked it up, I was in band for 6 years, played in the jazz band in high school for 3. So I know a little bit of music, though it's been many years since I've even picked up an instrument, unfortunately. But I'm listening to the Fantastic Four and I'm like, wait, is he putting it in 4/4 time as well? I'm like, I'm like, wait, and I'm counting the beats, and I'm like, I think he is. I think the Fantastic Four is actually in 4/4 time, which would,
Wow.
if he is, if it is, I haven't looked it up, but if it is, I'm like, that's just a little extra like nudge to the whole four theme,
Right.
and
See, yeah.
but that Fantastic Four theme, you're right. It stands out. It's wonderful. It is a bit cheesy, but at the same time, it is so fitting of the film and memorable. Like,
So memorable.
ah,
Yeah, it's I almost want to say, just in general, we're not as cool as we think we are.
no,
Let's geek
no,
out a
this is
little bit.
no.
Let's
Let's
geek
geek
out a
out.
little bit. Yeah, yeah, it's cheesy. Yeah, but I'm a nerd, loud and proud. I'm wearing a Perez Saraband pin,
Which
and I'm into
which
soundtracks.
which
I
I'm
mean,
I'm envious of your pin. That's how much of a nerd I am. I'm like,
I've
oh,
got
where do you
two
get
other
that pin?
Yeah, I've got two other varieties. And I also have a Perez Saraband t-shirt that I
Oh,
considered
nice.
wearing today, but in any case, oh, and I also have, well, these days it's only a plain maroon
Right.
looking coffee cup.
Oh,
But what it
nice.
was it was like a 2002 Perez Saraband coffee cup that used to have the
The
logo on it,
logo.
but it's been washed so many times that the logo is gone. It's just a maroon
Sure.
coffee mug now.
Sure.
But my point is I'm a total nerd, and I well, that's another thing that I love about Stranger Things is it celebrates
Yeah.
that. It
Mhm.
really, it's, I don't want to use these catchy phrases like normalizing something because um, I really think that most of us have a nerd in us, and I say nerd with the most affection you could possibly communicate,
Right.
lovingly, because I do think that again, that's an aspect of the human condition that I think every single one of us actually somewhere in whatever your little place is in some, when nobody's looking, everybody's a nerd somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's, tell me if I'm wrong, when you're nerding out, that's when you're having the most fun
Oh
ever.
yeah, yeah. That's when the most energy comes through. Like right now,
And is
this conversation with you. Part of the reason I wanted to interview you because I was like, soundtrack nerd. I gotta talk to a soundtrack nerd.
and so is it any coincidence that when we get movie music that is cheesy, perhaps, maybe just like totally over the top, nerding out, like just almost like, the jocks are embarrassed, but deep down, they're going to go back home and they're going to go in the basement and they're going to crank the soundtrack to the Fantastic Four First Steps too. They're just not going to tell
No,
anybody.
no, they just won't admit it. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I
Uh,
that's just how it is. I'm convinced. So anyway, that makes great movie music. So if you've got a nerdy composer, that's not going to hurt.
no, no, it's not going to hurt. So I know you had said you had a problem with picking your favorite either composer and that, and I'm like that with movies and music. I always hate that conversation of what's your favorite movie or what's your favorite soundtrack, and I go, give me more context
Yes,
because
please.
I can't pick just one. We were talking vocal soundtracks and movies that go together for me, and I get the side eye, and I fully recognize it. Maximum Overdrive is a wonderfully cheesy, campy movie. It's once Stephen King has come right out and said, yeah, that's the movie Cocaine made. He's like, I don't remember half of it. He's like, I dislike that movie. I adore that movie, and I adore this, and I swear it's one of those movies where that movie's better because of the soundtrack. That AC/DC
ACDC
soundtrack,
soundtrack. Yes.
which wasn't released necessarily, I've got it on vinyl, wasn't released as the soundtrack, that it was Who Made Who. And then on the back in the corner, like near the credits, says as music featured in Maximum Overdrive, and like a little logo on the
Yeah.
back. But otherwise,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just like
As a footnote.
yeah, just like Queen, It's a Kind of Magic is the soundtrack to Highlander that they use. They use those tracks for that. But
Right.
I think that movie got elevated, Maximum Overdrive, from the AC/DC score. The music, excuse me. And it was their greatest hits too. There was only 3 original tracks they recorded for that movie. Everything else was from their past library. But what
Yeah.
was also fun is that it brought people back to their music. You know,
Yes.
those art, suddenly people rediscovered AC/DC, and it was just like Meatloaf had that Leap of Faith with Steve Martin. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I'm not
um
familiar with that one.
Leap of Faith was a small movie that was made that starred Meatloaf in a supporting role, but it was Steve Martin. He plays a preacher, a traveling preacher, and it's all about, he's kind of a con man guy, and he kind of discovers his faith in this whole 9 yards. But Meatloaf was in it, and around that same time, yeah, 1992, around that same time, they re-released Paradise by Dashboard Light, and people are like, holy crap,
People.
this is,
Yeah.
it was getting played on the top 40 music again because it was on the
Yes.
soundtrack, because he was coming out with Bat Out of Hell 2 came out just after that, where he reteamed with Jim Steinman, who wrote the original Bat Out of Hell. But just having his song in it, and it just played over the credits, but just having him in the movie, the song played over the credits, it got radio play, people discovered his music, and suddenly he came out with like 2 or 3 new albums that were hitting the charts again because
Yeah.
people discovered it because that one song got released.
Yes. Yes, it can be a great vehicle
Mhm.
um, for that kind of a thing. Speaking of Maximum Overdrive, right, and cars and trucks and planes that drive themselves, that's kind of like always maybe the germ of the idea, perhaps for Christine.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was also big on, the music of the period, right, in the
Mhm.
50s. Like the novel at the beginning of every one of the chapters, and a lot of early Stephen King would do this. You'd have like a snippet of the lyrics from
Right.
a song, one of the hits of the era in
Right.
which, the story is taking place. And so, anyway, yeah, but I want to say you were leading up to talking about favorites, though. Were you going to ask me my
Oh
favorite
yeah, sorry.
composer or
I
something?
got sidetracked with the
No,
maximum
I just
overdrive. I
suddenly occurred
apologize.
to me.
That's the way my brain works. My apologies.
Well,
No,
mine too.
where I was going to say is for favorites, what would you say would be a desert island soundtrack for you? Like if you're trapped on that desert island and you had to have one soundtrack with you, what would it be?
Desert Island soundtrack. If I take it digitally with me, like on a hard drive, I
Sure.
could have maybe 100 of them.
No, no, it's like
Oh,
either
that's
cassette
cheating.
or CD, or you've got an album and
That's cheating.
you've
Okay.
got a
Well,
player. That's cheating. Yeah. Yeah, well, nowadays, yes. Okay. I guess I didn't even think of that with the question because I've been asked it before. But yeah, I guess digitally, yeah, I got my phone. I got like 200 soundtracks on here
yeah,
too.
exactly.
No,
See, I'm on a desert island. I beat you.
you beat me with that.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to skirt around it, in a suave kind
Mm,
of way. Well, it would definitely have to be probably, man, John Williams or Jerry Goldsmith. I mean, I know that's kind of like
no, nothing wrong with
those are
that.
the
No, but
guys, but
it's
the
probably,
sound.
one that you would listen to that you could listen to on repeat is basically what it is the one soundtrack. You're on an island. You could only play that one. What would be one of them? It doesn't have to be the exact one, but would you be able to do that with?
You know, I'm gonna say maybe Poltergeist.
Ooh, nice choice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've always been a sucker for the darker scores,
sure.
and Poltergeist is wonderful because not only is it dark, but it's also beautiful, and it
Hmm.
kind of even evokes sort of this
Right.
religious experience almost because you're dealing with the supernatural.
Hmm.
And all of that is just permeating the atmosphere
Hmm.
in that score. And I've heard the soundtrack to Poltergeist hundreds of times and it
Sure.
never gets old. So that's one of the reasons why I choose it. There of course are runners up,
Well, yeah.
but that I'm going to have to go with that because I have to pick something. I'm leaving so many worthy scores on the table, so many.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
and I'm like that too. I mean, there's lots of ones that could be it, but
yeah,
um,
but for sake of just staying simplistic and being,
mhm.
not taking forever and a day on this one, I'll just pick that one and say I think I'd be pretty set. I could have picked Castaway by Alan Silvestri, and I might have been a
Oh,
little more at home on a desert island. But
that's true. See, and for me, it always surprises people because as huge of a Danny Elfman fan I am of Williams and all of those, for me, I would say Conan the Barbarian, 1982, Basil Poldoris would be my desert island soundtrack. I have listened to that
so good,
thing more times than anything.
so
And
good.
when I'm in conversation, I'm like, if you ever want a prime example of the power of a soundtrack, I know you've got Williams in that, but listen to the Conan the Barbarian, the original score, because what you end up having is a movie where your main title character doesn't say a line of dialogue for 20 minutes in that film. From when he's
Isn't
on the
that something?
tree of
Yes.
woe to when he fights in the theatrical cut. In the director's cut, he speaks a little sooner, but in the theatrical cut, from when he's on the tree and he gets crucified to when he takes the Battle of the Mounds, that's almost 20 minutes. And while yes, you have supporting characters speaking, you need something to fill that emotion and such with. And
Right.
and Conan is one of those scores, kind of like Williams in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where it's basically orchestral pieces that you could listen on your own. You don't have to see the movie at all.
No, you don't. What an awesome choice too. That one, I wouldn't shed a tear if I was stranded on a desert island with that one myself. That is a fantastic soundtrack. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
and for me, yeah, I mean that's one of those where I'm very happy I have I looked online, it was like on vinyl. I'm like, where's the original print? Because I got the 2016 re-release they did. It's really nice sleeve and everything, but where's the original press? I actually got one for only $3 at a thrift store, and
Really?
the record's actually in good condition. The sleeve's a little beat up, but I'm like, holy crap, this thing's going for like such and such on the internet. I'm like, how much you want for
It's
it?
mine.
$3? There you go. I'm not even questioning it.
That's a done deal.
It's a
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's a point you brought up actually that I find really fascinating, and that is that you had mentioned that Conan the Barbarian is a soundtrack that you can just fall in love with as a piece of music apart from the movie, even if you've never seen the movie. My whole life, the majority of the soundtracks that I've loved, at least for a certain period of time until I saw the movie, perhaps, I loved the score without having seen
Yeah.
the movie at all. And those are the soundtracks that there's a special kind of magic to that. There's just something going on with that. Yeah, where you just love the music because the music is so good that it stands on its own. And of course, if it stands on its own, it's only going to be elevating the picture that it's in. And
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. And we're hoping your channel helps elevate people's awareness to soundtracks. Maybe not to the level of we just geeked out here, nerded out here for a while.
Oh, come on. Yeah, come on.
But well, okay. Hopefully it does bring you to that level.
Why not, right?
Why not? But Ted the Soundtrack Guy, this has been so much fun to talk to you and nerd out about soundtracks. Do you have a regular schedule for when you post out videos, or is when you just get them done? Speak a little bit about your channel, what they can expect, from your channel and content.
Well, first of all, when I relaunched the channel, after my passion drove me back to the grindstone and we went at it again, I kind of lost track of time. I want to say maybe a couple months ago, or just barely. It might not even quite be that. And my goal in the launch video that I made, kind of explaining what had happened to the old channel and what you can expect going forward with Ted the Soundtrack Guy 2.0, you could say. One of the things that I had mentioned was that I had a goal to get back to, I made it an even 250 subscribers because we were at 249 when the first one went kaput. By August 11th, that was the goal. And if we reached 250 subscribers by August 11th, and mind you, it took almost 6 months to get there, essentially, the first time around. So that was pretty ambitious. But August 11th, and we are now, what is it, August 2nd?
Yeah, August 2nd. So
August 2nd. And we are just today at 300 subscribers.
Awesome.
So we are already in advance of that goal by 50 subscribers. Maybe more than that, because I haven't checked since this interview started, but they're coming in and they're proving every single day that there is an audience for this kind of music. And so going forward, also, I said if we met that goal, that my subscribers were going to have an opportunity to vote. This is going to be in the future. For the Jerry Goldsmith soundtrack that they're most interested in me doing a review video for. Yes. And so that's going to be happening in the future. I'll just tally up all those votes, and whichever score has the most votes, that's the one I'm backed in the corner to doing, whether I feel like doing it or not. Because that's what I promised, and I'm going to make good on it.
Got to make good on that, yeah.
But I figure, notice I selected Jerry Goldsmith's score, so I figure no matter what they pick, I'm going to be satisfied. So far, the schedule is every Monday at 7 a.m. there should be a new video. Now, I am a father of a 3-year-old daughter and a husband, and life happens to us all, and things get pretty busy. So that is the goal going forward, is that every Monday we're going to have some content. Regardless, there's going to be content coming out because, again, it's clear that there is an audience for this and that people are interested in this kind of a dialogue about soundtracks, this kind of the information too about the albums and what's in the liner notes and what the composer director collaboration was, just the behind the scenes stuff. People are interested in those kinds of things. So there's going to continue to be the review videos, unboxing videos, things like that. And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to what's to come. There's some Jerry Goldsmith videos coming out very soon. Some John Williams coming out very soon. Not that I really needed to tell you that, because those are the guys that
I would say I was surprised, but
seeing maybe a pattern here. But there's also, and there will be more, of course, but there's also a Danny Elfman coming back. Well, this one's coming back because this is one that was present before. So there's a Danny Elfman coming up in the near future. And so there's a lot to look forward to. Yeah.
Awesome.
And,
awesome. And are you mostly just on YouTube then? Do you have a website or anything?
Just YouTube for now.
YouTube. Okay.
Just YouTube for now. And I just hope to take it for all it's worth there. And I figure that's a good starting platform. And then maybe in the future, we'll branch out from there.
Well, you've hit the ground running already at 300 subscribers in a couple of months online, so I have a good feeling about your channel. So folks, yes, check out Ted the Soundtrack Guy. I'll have his links down below in the description of this interview. And this has been such a pleasure. I as you could tell, I nerd out about soundtracks so much.
Yes.
Happy to talk to you, and be happy to have you back again sometime. Maybe if we ever do a soundtrack podcast of some sort or such. As long
that'd be great.
As long as YouTube doesn't, tighten up on them copyrights, because yeah, I tried a soundtrack show a couple of times, and when I got a major strike against my channel, it turned me away from it because I got a little too leery. Warner Brothers came after me. They're really big on that. So,
yeah, I know that can definitely be a sensitive spot. So, well, let's just hope that they recognize that what we're doing is actually helping to sell their records.
Right. That is the thing that's always confused me, is like, we're literally promoting your material. So, but yeah, folks, check out Ted the Soundtrack Guy, and thank you so much. And yeah, we'll have you back sometime, sir. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.